Night once again spread across the sky, its dark hue enveloping both heaven and earth. The primordial energy in the air also became erratic under the influence of the darkness, growing increasingly violent. In a mountain range not too far from Myriad Elephant City, 3 figures sat quietly around a campfire. Their expressions were calm, undisturbed by the roars of demonic beasts echoing through the night. These 3 were Lin Dong and his companions, who had been traveling tirelessly from the northwestern region toward Myriad Elephant City. Though they had pushed themselves to the limit, it still took nearly 5 days to reach this point. At this pace, we should arrive at Myriad Elephant City tomorrow, Lin Dong said with a stretch, smiling as he sat beside the fire. Little Yin nodded, while Little Mink, as lazy as ever, lifted his eyes and scanned the darkness. Looks like those 2 have finally given up on following us, he remarked. Lin Dong chuckled softly. I've heard that forces from some of the most powerful sects guard Myriad Elephant City. I doubt those mysterious pursuers would dare get too close. Little Mink nodded in agreement and leaned back against a large tree. The primordial energy around them had become intensely chaotic as the night deepened. The ground trembled, and the roars of demonic beasts echoed into the sky. From the distance, one could faintly see terrifying beast tides sweeping through the mountains. Yet, within the 100-foot radius around Lin Dong and his companions, not a single beast dared approach. Even the beast tides seemed to deliberately avoid their area, as if something about this place frightened them. With the 2 of you here, these beast tides are hardly worth worrying about, Lin Dong said with a smile. Little Yin possessed the bloodline of the Heaven Demon Tiger clan, and Little Mink had regained his physical form as a heavenly demon mink. Their mere presence was enough to deter the beasts. During these 5 days of travel, they encountered little resistance and could even enjoy a rare sense of leisure, a feeling they hadn't experienced since arriving on the ancient battleground. Both Little Yin, now beginning to show his strength, and Little Mink, whose power was steadily recovering, had grown into formidable figures in their own right. Lin Dong no longer had to shoulder all the burdens by himself, facing powerful enemies alone as he had in the past. This is nothing compared to what you'd face in the demon realm. If you ever make it there, you'll understand what a real beast tide looks like, Little Mink said, smirking. The demon realm? Huh? I'd love to see it one day, Lin Dong replied, intrigued by the mysterious region. Going to the demon realm isn't easy. There's a massive chaos demon sea between the eastern mystery region and the demon realm. Even at my peak, I had to be cautious crossing it, Little Mink explained. Chaos Demon Sea, Lin Dong murmured, feeling the name sounded somewhat familiar. The map you obtained from the Rune Master Tower in Yin City? It mentions the location of the second ancestral talisman. Right in the Chaos Demon Sea, Little Mink reminded him. Lin Dong's eyes lit up in realization. He couldn't help but click his tongue in anticipation. A second ancestral talisman? There were only 8 of these legendary artifacts in existence. He wondered what type of talisman this one might be. Lin Dong had already had the devouring ancestral talisman for quite some time. Without its abilities, it would have been much harder for him to reach his current level in just a couple of years. His desire for the ancestral talismans grew stronger by the day. There are 8 ancestral talismans. Besides your devouring ancestral talisman, I once met someone who possessed the flame ancestral talisman. That guy was a real monster. He could evaporate an entire river with just a flick of his hand. I even suffered quite a loss at his hands back in the day. He was one of the most powerful beings in this world. Who knows, you might meet him one day, Little Mink said with a hint of nostalgia. Flame ancestral talisman? Lin Dong's eyes gleamed with curiosity. He was eager to learn just how powerful that talisman might be. Don't be envious. The devouring ancestral talisman is said to be the most mysterious of the 8. It has its own unique power, but you haven't reached the level where you can fully unlock its potential, Little Mink remarked lazily. Lin Dong nodded. Although he was curious about the flame ancestral talisman's abilities, he wasn't overly envious or greedy. He knew the importance of mastering what he already had. Even if he were lucky enough to obtain another talisman, it would be difficult to refine, and attempting to do so might end up causing more harm than good. Seeing Lin Dong's understanding, Little Mink stopped speaking, casually reaching out a finger to poke at the flames in boredom. After a moment, his hand suddenly paused, and his brow furrowed slightly. At the same time, Lin Dong and Little Yin also sensed something and raised their heads, their gazes fixed on the darkness in the dense forest ahead. From there, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed. Lin Dong and Little Mink's expressions remained unchanged, while Little Yan's hand slowly moved toward the black iron staff lying beside him. The campfire crackled, and soon, several figures emerged from the darkness. 3 people stepped out. The leader was a robust man with a rugged appearance. Behind him were 2 women, one dressed in red, with a graceful, curvaceous figure that stood out against the night, her face strikingly beautiful. Though not quite on par with Mu Hongling, she was still a considerable beauty. The other was a young girl in green, whose delicate, fresh features were paired with large black eyes that lacked the mature sharpness Lin Dong was accustomed to seeing. Instead, they carried a hint of timidity. Lin Dong glanced at the trio, his gaze lingering briefly on the girl in the dark blue clothes before dropping his eyes, showing little interest. "Friends, we've been cut off by the beast tide and saw your campfire, so we had no choice but to seek refuge here. I wonder if we could rest for a while?" The rugged man scanned Lin Dong's group cautiously before cupping his fists and speaking politely. "No," Little Mink replied flatly, not even looking up. He could sense trouble brewing around these people. "You." The red-clothed woman behind the man frowned sharply, clearly annoyed. But before she could speak, the man quickly stopped her. Despite his rough exterior, his mind was sharp. The entire mountain range was overrun with a beast tide. Yet this spot remained eerily quiet, with even the tides avoiding it. Though he couldn't be sure that these 3 young people were the reason, he dared not be careless. "If our friends don't wish to be disturbed, then we'll take our leave," the man said decisively, gritting his teeth and preparing to leave. Beside him, the girl in green bit her lip, her large eyes filled with fear as she glanced at Lin Dong's group. In a timid voice, she pleaded, "Big brothers, we won't disturb you. We'll just stay nearby until the beast tide passes. If you're still not satisfied, we can offer some nirvana pills as payment." "Well, how about 2 million nirvana pills?" Little Mink replied nonchalantly. The girl's face instantly flushed red at his words, her big eyes welling up with tears, leaving Little Mink somewhat dumbfounded. He hadn't expected such an innocent reaction from someone who had made it to the ancient battleground, where only the elites of various dynasties gathered. "My brother's just joking. Come, sit by the fire," Lin Dong said, raising his head with a friendly smile. His gaze softened as he looked at the girl in green, reminding him of his sister, Qingzhu. He wondered how she was doing now. Seeing Lin Dong speak, Little Mink remained silent. The strongest of the 3 newcomers was only the rugged man, barely in the threefold nirvana stage, posing no threat to them. The trio hesitated briefly, but then cautiously approached the campfire and sat down, visibly relieved. "I'm Su Kuei, and this is my sister, Su Ro." The rugged man introduced himself with a polite bow, then gestured to the girl in green before motioning to the red-clothed woman. "This is our companion, Lu Ya. We come from the Great Qing dynasty, just a mid-tier dynasty," Su Kuei added with a sheepish grin, clearly trying to show they pose no danger. Lin Dong smiled, finding the man's careful approach amusing. "I'm Lin Dong, and these are my 2 brothers, Lin Yin and Lin Mink." Ignoring Little Mink's rolling eyes, Lin Dong gave them a shared surname for simplicity's sake. He couldn't very well introduce him as Little Mink in front of others. "We're from the Great Yin dynasty, a low-tier dynasty," Lin Dong added. At this, Su Kuei and his companions were visibly surprised. They had clearly not expected these mysterious figures to hail from such a humble background. "Are you really from a low-tier dynasty, Brother Lin Dong?" Su Ro, the girl in green, asked, her large eyes filled with curiosity. Her innocent demeanor made Lin Dong smile softly. After nearly a year of fighting and competition on the ancient battleground, it had been a long time since he'd spoken so peacefully with others. He nodded, cutting a piece of roasted meat from the fire and handing it to Su Ro. "If you're not afraid I've poisoned it, then go ahead and eat." Su Ro blushed, whispering a shy "thank you" as she took the meat. As she did, Her slender fingers brushed against Lin Dong's hand. In that brief moment of contact, Lin Dong's expression changed ever so slightly, though he hid it well. Beside him, the usually nonchalant little mink also seemed to sense something, his eyes narrowing. The campfire flickered, casting a soft red glow on Lin Dong's face, deepening the shadows of his features. His gaze lingered on Su-ro's youthful, delicate face for a second before he withdrew his eyes, acting as though nothing had happened. Outwardly, Lin Dong remained calm, but inside, his thoughts churned. In that brief contact, he had sensed a terrifying surge of primordial energy hidden within Su-ro's seemingly innocent body. The energy fluctuation within her was even stronger than Lin Dong's, and he was certain that what he sensed wasn't the full extent of it. This meant that the seemingly innocent girl, who looked to be about the same age as Qingzhu, was hiding a power that even he couldn't match. Lin Dong pressed his lips together slightly, unable to stop his gaze from drifting back to Su-ro. She was happily eating the roasted meat, her delicate face showing undisguised delight. It was hard to imagine that such a lovable girl could conceal such a terrifying strength. Lin Dong casually handed some more meat to Su Kuei and the red-dressed woman, then exchanged a glance with Little Mink. He knew that Little Mink, with his keen senses, must have also detected something. Indeed, Little Mink noticed Lin Dong's look and gave an almost imperceptible nod, signaling caution. Among the three newcomers, Su Kuei and the other woman posed no real threat, but Su-ro. Even Little Mink couldn't quite make sense of her. If her innocent demeanor was an act, then her acting skills were truly remarkable, to the point that even someone as experienced as Lin Dong found her endearing. Little Yin, though unaware of what Lin Dong and Little Mink had sensed, seemed to pick up on the tension. His massive frame leaned slightly forward, giving off the feeling of a predator ready to pounce. "Thank you, Brother Lin Dong," Su-ro said sweetly, wiping her mouth after finishing the roasted meat. Her small lips were a bit greasy, and she blushed as she smiled shyly at Lin Dong. Lin Dong smiled back, his eyes lowering as he stared into the crackling flames. He remained silent for a while, waiting until Su Kuei and the others had eaten their fill before speaking again. "With little sister Su-ro's strength, surely the beast tide in this mountain range doesn't pose much of a threat to you, does it?" As soon as his words fell, the atmosphere around the campfire froze. Su Kuei looked at Lin Dong in shock, while Su-ro's face turned pale, and she instinctively recoiled slightly. Both Little Mink and Little Yin were confused by their reaction, unsure of what was going on. "What do you know?" Su Kuei asked, his face shifting through a range of expressions as he stared at Lin Dong. "I have some skill in spiritual perception," Lin Dong replied calmly. "I can sense the enormous power hidden within her. As for who you are or where you come from, I'm not particularly interested. I just don't want to be caught in someone else's schemes. On this battleground, I think you understand the need for caution." "You think we approached you with ulterior motives?" the red-dressed woman snapped, her voice sharp with anger. "What do you think?" Little Mink shot back with a cold smile. It was only natural to be on guard when strangers, especially those feigning weakness despite possessing great strength, suddenly came close. Su Kuei frowned, his face shifting between frustration and contemplation. Su-ro, still looking timid, now had red-rimmed eyes, clearly upset that Lin Dong and the others were suspicious of her. "It's understandable that you'd think we have ill intentions," Su Kuei finally said, a bitter smile crossing his face. "Lin Dong, you're not wrong. My little sister does have a powerful force within her, but it doesn't belong to her. At least, not yet. My sister is exceptionally talented. In the Great Qing dynasty, she's considered the best of her generation. But her nature is too soft, which makes her ill-suited for a place like this," Su Kuei continued, ruffling Su-ro's hair with a wry smile. "A while ago, we stumbled into an ancient area. We thought we had found some kind of treasure or inheritance, but we ended up with nothing. Well, not exactly nothing. The only thing we got was when Su-ro accidentally activated a seal that drew an ancient power into her body." Lin Dong blinked, processing this information, and couldn't help but grimace. Here he was, struggling desperately to improve his strength bit by bit, while Su-ro had, by sheer accident, gained a power that even he found daunting. Little Mink frowned, staring thoughtfully at the timid-looking Su-ro. The power she absorbed is incredibly vast and mysterious. We can't even fully comprehend it, and Su-ro certainly can't control it yet. Still, we know this is a good thing. Given time, she will eventually adapt to the power. But ever since we obtained it, we've been pursued. That's why we ended up here tonight. We have no ill intentions toward the three of you, Sukue explained with a helpless smile. But don't worry, we won't bring any trouble your way. As soon as the beast tide passes, we'll leave. Looking at the apologetic expression on Sukue's rugged face, and then at Su-ro's timid gaze, Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a little guilty. The way she stared at him, full of fear, made him feel as though he'd done something unforgivable. Lin Dong chuckled softly at her expression. He felt like he was being accused of some great crime. Haha, don't worry about it. This guy is just overly suspicious. He's been burned too many times in the past, so he's extra sensitive in situations like this, Little Mink suddenly said, his face now sporting an unusually warm smile. Lin Dong glanced at Little Mink, feeling both amused and exasperated at how quickly he'd shifted the blame onto him. But knowing Little Mink's cunning nature, Lin Dong figured he must have picked up on something important to prompt this sudden change in attitude. Sukue and his companions, caught off guard by Little Mink's newfound friendliness, turned to Lin Dong. They had already sensed that Lin Dong was the leader of the trio. My earlier caution may have been a bit much. I hope you won't take offense, Lin Dong said, cupping his hands in apology. He could be ruthless toward his enemies, but that didn't mean he was heartless toward others. Brother Lin Dong, you're too kind. We're already grateful that you've let us shelter here from the beast tide, Sukue quickly replied. Su-ro, visibly relieved, sat down next to Sukue, though she made sure to keep a little more distance from Lin Dong. When she glanced at him, she quickly looked away, her shy demeanor making Lin Dong chuckle. After so long on the ancient battleground, it was the first time he had seen someone as innocent as Su-ro. If I'm not mistaken, the immense power that suddenly appeared in her body is likely an ancient spiritual imprint left behind by a powerful figure. This sort of thing has its benefits and its dangers. If she can control it, it could help her ascend to great heights in an instant. But if she can't, the power hidden within the imprint could gradually erode her consciousness and ultimately take over her body. Like a cuckoo invading another's nest, Little Mink remarked as he idly played with a wisp of fire. At his words, Sukue and his companions' faces changed dramatically. Clearly, they hadn't realized just how dangerous this power could be. Let's hope this young girl can gain control over that power. After all, it's a tremendous opportunity, one that most people could only dream of. But nothing in this world comes without risks. Every reward has its price, Little Mink added indifferently. I will control this power. I will protect my brother and sister Luya. I won't let them keep running like this, Su-ro muttered, her head lowered, biting her lip. Both Lin Dong and Little Mink were slightly taken aback. They hadn't expected such determination from the seemingly timid girl. The night wore on, and the campfire's warm glow encircled the group, warding off the cold darkness. As time passed, the oppressive night gradually retreated. When the first hint of light appeared at the horizon, the violent primordial energy in the air finally calmed. Brother Lin Dong, thank you for your hospitality last night. We won't linger any longer. We'll be taking our leave, Sukue said, standing by the now extinguished campfire. He exhaled in relief and cupped his hands toward Lin Dong before turning to leave without further words. Brother Lin Dong, Brother Lin Yin, Brother Lin Mink, we're leaving. Please take care of yourselves. Su-ro called out, her face flushing as she waved her small hand at them. Her innocent manner even made Little Mink, who usually showed little emotion, shrug in mild amusement. After Sukue and his companions departed, Lin Dong and the others remained seated by the campfire, showing no sign of moving. They've been intercepted, Little Mink suddenly remarked out of nowhere. Lin Dong nodded slightly. That little girl has great potential. If she's trained properly, she'll accomplish much in the future. It would be a shame if she were killed, Little Mink continued. Lin Dong shot him a glance, then tossed aside the stick he had been using to stir the dirt. Little Yin, sitting nearby, picked up his black iron staff, his hand tightening around it. Let's go. We've made plenty of enemies on our journey and never gone out of our way to help anyone. I suppose this time we'll make an exception, Lin Dong said as he stretched lazily and stood up, a bright but chilling smile playing on his lips. In the lush forest, a sudden explosion of primordial energy shattered the silence. Massive trees collapsed as a figure shot backward, skidding across the ground for dozens of meters before slamming into a tree. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Big brother. Two female figures rushed toward the fallen man, their faces pale with worry. Luya, protect Su Ro and get her out of here. The injured man, Su Kue, ordered as he struggled to his feet, his face ashen. He forced himself to stand upright despite his injuries. The two women beside him, naturally Su Ro and Luya, paled at the sight of Su Kue's wounds. Haha, you've given us a bit of trouble, but it looks like this is the end. A cold laugh echoed from the forest. The sound of whooshing filled the air as 5 shadowy figures appeared, perching atop a large tree. Their eyes gleamed with a cat-like amusement, as if they were playing with their prey. Yinamo, you're pushing us too far. Su Kue roared angrily at the 5 figures. You've only yourselves to blame for taking what wasn't yours. A mere mid-tier dynasty like yours dares to claim such a legacy? The leader of the group, a sinister-looking man named Yinamo, smiled coldly as he eyed the furious Su Kue. Hand over your sister, and maybe I'll make your death quick, Yinamo added, his tone dripping with indifference. In your dreams. Su Kue growled through gritted teeth, pushing through the pain as he circulated his primordial energy. Su Ro, seeing her brother's strained expression, felt tears welling up in her large eyes. She knew that the 5 figures before them were incredibly powerful, with 3 of them already at the threefold nirvana stage. Su Kue alone couldn't possibly defeat them. If he kept fighting, he would surely die. Brave, but such people rarely live long, Yinamo sneered, his lips curling into a cruel smile. In the next instant, his body shot forward, his palm crashing down with a violent force like a storm, aiming directly at Su Kue. Seeing Yinmo's ruthless attack, Su Kue hurriedly pushed Su Ro aside, using all his strength to muster a punch to meet Yinmo head-on. Boom! The impact of their clash sent shockwaves rippling through the area, shredding the fallen leaves into dust. The ferocious energy blast sent both Su Ro and Luya flying backward. Su Kue, already pale, stumbled further, his face paling even more as blood spurted from his mouth. His injuries were severe. Despite injuring Su Kue, Yinamo showed no sign of letting up. His eyes gleamed with murderous intent as he gathered powerful energy at his fingertips, forming it into a sharp blade of light aimed at Su Kue's throat. Big brother! Su Ro cried out, her face turning ashen. Her small figure darted forward, positioning herself between Su Kue and Yinmo's deadly strike. Although her strength wasn't insignificant, her timid nature left her shaken by Yinmo's sinister gaze, weakening her resolve. A touching scene, but I'm not one to show mercy. Yinmo sneered, his voice laced with malice. The energy at his fingertips grew sharper as it shot towards Su Ro's delicate face. Su Ro, get out of the way. Su Kue shouted in panic from behind her. Su Ro's petite body trembled as fear flickered in her large eyes. She bit her lip, staring helplessly at the oncoming, deadly strike. Just as the fierce energy was about to hit, an overwhelming surge of primordial energy erupted from within her. The force of the shockwave was so immense that it sent Yinamo flying backward. However, Su Ro clearly couldn't fully control this power, and her body shook under its intense ebb and flow. So this is the power you gained from that sealed land? What a waste to give such strength to a little girl like you. Yinamo scoffed as he lightly tapped his toes in midair, dissipating the shockwave. His eyes gleamed with greed as he looked at Su Ro. Then, with a wave of his hand, he ordered, "Everyone, move in. Capture her." Whoosh! At Yinmo's command, the 4 figures who had yet to make a move sprang into action. Their eyes grew cold, and without uttering a word, they shot forward in perfect coordination. Their combined energy sealed off all of Su Ro's escape routes, and a torrential surge of fierce primordial energy surged toward her like a tidal wave. Su-Ro's face turned even paler as she watched the deadly attacks descend on her like a storm. Her own strength was only at the second nirvana stage, and the immense power within her was far beyond her control, only surfacing sporadically. With no way to avoid the combined assault of these 5 experts, she found herself cornered. Su Kuei, watching from behind, felt his heart drop as his eyes reddened. He wanted to rush forward to save his sister, but the turmoil in his body slowed the circulation of his energy, leaving him helpless as Su-Ro was engulfed by the vicious attacks. Just as the violent energy was about to crash down on Su-Ro's small frame, a sharp whistling sound cut through the air. A dark shadow shot out from the forest like a specter, appearing in front of Su-Ro in the blink of an eye. Brilliant golden light erupted, forming a protective shield of radiant energy around them. Boom, boom, boom. The violent attacks slammed into the golden shield, causing ripples of energy to spread outward. The fierce winds tore through the area, but no matter how intense the ripples became, the golden shield remained steadfast, protecting the 2 figures within. The bright golden light forced Su-Ro to squint her large eyes. When she managed to open them, she saw the figure standing before her. Bathed in the golden glow, the figure didn't appear particularly muscular, but there was an upright strength about him, like a pine tree standing tall against the elements. It felt as though his back alone could bear the weight of the heavens themselves. For the first time in her life, Su-Ro saw a figure as steady and resolute as her elder brothers. But why did this back seem so familiar? As the golden light dimmed and eventually faded away, the young man finally turned around. With a gentle smile, he looked at Su-Ro and asked softly, "Are you okay, Brother Lin Dong?" Su-Ro blinked in surprise, and then, flustered, she nodded quickly. Her big eyes darted away, her cheeks turning red with embarrassment. As the golden light vanished, Yinamo and his 4 companions, who had watched the scene unfold, narrowed their eyes at the sight of Lin Dong standing before Su-Ro. Yin Mo's voice turned icy as he growled, "Who do you think you are, daring to interfere in our business? So many of you, bullying a little girl. Even thick skin has its limits, don't you think?" Lin Dong smiled calmly as he looked up at Yin Mo and his group. Yin Mo's eyes darkened. His lips twitched as he said slowly, "Friend, if you're looking to play the hero, you might want to first understand who you're dealing with. Do you even know the power of the Stormcloud dynasty? A super dynasty, huh?" Lin Dong raised an eyebrow in mild surprise. "Brother Lin Dong, this Stormcloud dynasty is incredibly powerful. I'm already grateful that you stepped in, but I don't expect anything more. Please, just help Su-Ro escape. I'll stay here and hold them off," Su Kuei shouted urgently. The sudden appearance of Lin Dong had shocked him, but he quickly grasped the situation. He didn't know the full extent of Lin Dong's strength, but if he could buy Su-Ro enough time to flee, sacrificing his life would be worth it. "I don't want to leave. Brother Lin Dong, thank you, but you should go. These people are too strong." Su-Ro shook her head, her voice trembling. "I never do anything meaningless," Lin Dong replied with a smile, playfully flicking Su-Ro's smooth forehead. He then turned his gaze toward Yinamo and his group, his tone turning cold. "Sorry, but we'll be taking these 3 with us. You really think you have the right?" Yinamo sneered, his expression twisted with malice. Lin Dong's smile remained as he locked eyes with Yinamo slowly. He nodded. "I believe I do." Yin Mo's face darkened, and just as he was about to strike, a sudden jolt of fear surged through his heart. He spun around to see 2 figures perched atop a large tree behind Lin Dong. Their sharp, menacing gazes bore down on him, filled with the same cold amusement that Yin Mo's group had directed at Su Kuei and his companions earlier. "Take care of them," Lin Dong said softly, his eyes gleaming with an icy light. As he waved his hand, an overwhelming aura of killing intent filled the air. The moment Lin Dong's quiet command fell, Su-Ro, Su Kuei, and Luya all saw the hulking, silent figure of little Yin. His usually gentle, somewhat clumsy demeanor vanished, replaced by a terrifying bloodlust. In an instant, it was as though this gentle giant had transformed into a fierce demon, a warrior born from the depths of slaughter. Seeing Little Yan's fierce demeanor, Su Kuei swallowed his words. From the moment he met Lin Dong's group, he sensed there was something mysterious about them. Lin Dong didn't seem like someone who acted recklessly, and since he was still willing to confront these enemies after knowing their background, he clearly had something to rely on. In this ancient battleground, Su Kuei had encountered many people who kept a low profile yet possessed terrifying strength. He couldn't rule out that Lin Dong might be one of those. "You fools!" Yinemo and his 4 companions sneered, their rage turning into laughter. "Recently, many like you have shown up at Myriad Elephant City, thinking there's something special. But you're the first to dare provoke the Stormcloud dynasty. Kill them all. Leave no survivors." Yenmo's voice was icy as he waved his hand, issuing a deadly order. Whoosh! As soon as Yenemo spoke, the 4 figures beside him shot forward in unison. Among them, 2 were in the threefold Nirvana stage, while the other 2 were in the second Nirvana stage, a formidable lineup by any measure. The 4 attacked simultaneously, waves of powerful primordial energy spreading rapidly. Their overwhelming presence bore down on Lin Dong's group, and they showed no mercy, immediately unleashing their most lethal martial arts techniques. The air howled with energy, carrying a murderous intent as it surged toward them. "Brother Lin Dong, be careful," Su Ro called out in panic as she saw the violent assault heading their way. However, Lin Dong remained calm. He simply waved his hand behind him toward Su Ro, showing no sign of preparing to counter the attack himself. Boom! The torrent of primordial energy roared like a raging flood. But just as it was about to reach Lin Dong, the air in front of him exploded. A massive shadow descended with an oppressive force. A black iron staff, wielded with terrifying power, cut through the air and smashed into the incoming attack, shattering it with brute force. The one who struck was, of course, Little Yin. His moves were not flashy, but the phrase, "strength overcomes all," was perfectly embodied in him. The staff shadow crushed the martial arts techniques with sheer force. Little Yan's hulking figure landed heavily in front of Lin Dong. His eyes, already glowing red with fury, radiated a terrifying killing intent, like a tiger unleashed from its cage. The 4 attackers were clearly startled by Little Yan's raw power. However, they were seasoned fighters and didn't lose their composure. Their expressions simply grew more serious. Boom! Little Yin stomped the ground, and his massive body shot forward with astonishing speed, defying his size. In a flash, the shadow of his iron staff appeared in front of one of the Stormcloud dynasty experts. The suddenness of the attack startled the man, who hastily summoned a barrier of golden light around his body. Humph! A mocking snort escaped Little Yan's throat as his muscles bulged and veins popped along his arm. The staff crashed down onto the golden barrier with terrifying force. Clang! The sound of metal clashing echoed through the air, and to everyone's shock, the supposedly indestructible golden shield shattered instantly. The man behind the barrier was sent flying, skidding across the ground for over 100 meters before crashing into the forest, his fate uncertain. Having eliminated one opponent with a single blow, Little Yan's gaze remained fierce. Without pausing, he seized the brief moment of hesitation from the remaining 3 and unleashed 3 deadly strikes. The staff shadows tore through the air and slammed into the chests of his targets. The golden light around them instantly dimmed. The 3 remaining fighters spat out blood. The 2 in the threefold Nirvana stage fared slightly better, but the one in the second Nirvana stage had his chest completely caved in by Little Yan's attack, dying on the spot. "You bastard!" Finally snapping out of their shock, the 2 surviving threefold Nirvana stage experts roared in fury. But before they could retaliate, Little Yan's massive figure surged forward once more, his staff sweeping through the air like a storm of death. Boom! 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 The 2 sides clashed mid-air, their exchanges happening at lightning speed. Waves of primordial energy and violent wind exploded outwards as the 3 figures locked in a deadly battle. Lin Dong watched the aerial combat with a calm expression, showing no concern. Even he couldn't fully gauge Little Yan's strength anymore. During a previous encounter, Little Yin had even bested Mu Huang from the Great Qian dynasty. These fighters from the Stormcloud dynasty, who had just barely survived their 3rd Nirvana tribulation, were no match for him. Brother Lin Yin is so strong. Su Ro's face flushed as she watched the battle unfold, her eyes filled with admiration. The way little Yin dispatched multiple powerful opponents so effortlessly left her feeling both amazed and excited. Your own strength isn't weak either. If you really want to protect your brother, you need to change your attitude. On this battleground, even if you possess great power, if your mindset remains soft, you'll always be a lamb among wolves, Lin Dong said gently. This time you were lucky we were here. But what about next time? You can't always rely on others to save you in dangerous situations, right? Lin Dong exhaled softly. If he had held the same mindset years ago, he would have died many times over by now. I understand. Though Lin Dong's words weren't harsh and even carried a trace of warmth, Su Ro still felt the weight of his advice. She could only nod obediently, unable to refute his reasoning. Su Kuei, standing nearby, was momentarily stunned by the scene before him. Then, as if something inside him relaxed, he let out a small, inexplicable smile, seeming to feel relieved. Boom, boom. The mid-air battle played out exactly as Lin Dong had predicted. It didn't last long. Under Little Yan's relentless storm-like assault, the two threefold Nirvana experts finally succumbed. Seizing an opening, Little Yan's iron staff, charged with terrifying power, smashed into their bodies. The two figures were sent flying backward, blood gushing from their wounds as they hit the ground hard. The force from their impact cracked the earth, leaving thick fissures spreading like a spiderweb across the terrain. With those two dispatched, Little Yin swung his iron staff once more, pointing it toward Yin Mo, who stood not far away with an unsettled expression. His voice, filled with killing intent, rumbled, "You're next?" Yin Mo's expression darkened. Watching this unfold, he was deeply shaken by Little Yan's overwhelming strength. Yet, he gritted his teeth and spat out bitterly, "You've gotten yourselves into serious trouble. Since we entered this ancient battlefield, trouble has been constant," Lin Dong replied lazily. "Keep acting tough. You'll regret this soon enough." Yin Mo hissed, his voice dripping with venom as he began retreating. He wasn't foolish. He knew that in his current situation, he stood no chance against Lin Dong's group. Staying any longer would only put his own life at risk. Lin Dong watched Yin Mo's retreat with cold indifference. He then glanced at Little Mink, who caught the look and let out a mischievous chuckle before vanishing without a trace. "If trouble comes our way, there's no need to show mercy," Lin Dong murmured softly as he watched Little Mink disappear. His words carried an icy chill, which made Su Kuei and Luya swallow nervously. They hadn't expected that the seemingly most easygoing of the three would actually be the one with the most ruthless methods.